It is Thursday afternoon as we talk to you. And when I say we, I mean Steve Bone and myself. Hi, Steve.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good, you?
Okay, I think, yes. Thursday afternoon comes around quickly, doesn't it?
It does, and we all look forward to hearing what you have to say. But I mention it because we'll be playing it through the week, although that isn't so critical as it is during the season, because during the season we get a prediction from you. And you have to live with that prediction going out after the game.
Yeah, sometimes that's good. When I predict a 1-0 home win over Leeds, that's good. I want people to hear it.
Yes, correct.
When I say we're going to get something at Sheffield United, I don't want people hearing it for a week because we don't.
No.
So,
then again, there's your podcast, which is flying off the shelves. So thank you
I believe,
for allowing us to attach your name to the Pompey Sound podcast. Let's get stuck in to the fact that there isn't much to get stuck into.
Well, there isn't really, is there? Even now the transfer window's open. It opened on the 1st of June, so we've had it open a few days. It's going to close again on the 10th. I think it did blow shut earlier, but I opened it again, so it'll be open until the 10th. And then it closes again for a week, and then it opens again on the 16th or something, which is all a bit daft. But yeah, there's not much. There's nothing concrete happening, is there? We haven't actually unveiled anybody yet.
No,
we haven't sold anybody of our contracted players, which is probably good. A few rumours, but even the rumour mill doesn't seem to be turning quite as fast as usual, does it? There was one new name in the pot that caught my eye.
Go on.
Might we have another Freddie Potts coming to us?
Oh, we'd like that.
I mean, obviously we'd like the original Freddie Potts back, but we don't think that's going to happen, do we? We think West Ham are probably going to use him. But one that popped up at the start of the week, the West Ham Zone, westhamzone.com, who, as the name suggests, look at everything that moves at the London Stadium, have come up with the name Lewis Orford, and that's not as in Andy Orford, that's Orford. Okay. Lewis Orford, 19-year-old midfielder, and they're suggesting that he could follow in his clubmate Freddie Potts' footsteps and come to Pompey on loan next season. Okay. Because West Ham will be very happy with how Potts has come on and got a lot of time and done very well and settled in so well at Pompey in his year, that they would, and it makes sense, they would be happy to send a similar player, a player at a similar level of development down to Pompey and see how he gets on.
Well, what do you know about him, if anything? Early doors.
Not a lot. No. So he's 19. He's a central midfield player. I think maybe similar sort of style to Potts in that he can play a bit. He can do the dirty work in midfield, but he can play a bit and likes to sort of spray the ball around a bit. We know what a tidy player Potts was, don't we? So if Lewis Orford has come through the same sort of academy setup and under the same coaches, that's a good sign. And we are assuming we're not going to get Potts back and we're not going to get Isaac Hayden back. We are a bit light in midfield, aren't we? So you probably think we will sign one or two, but you probably think there's room there for a loan or two as well. So that might just suit all parties. I don't think we've completely given up hope yet of getting Freddie Potts, but if you get to the point where you're assuming we won't, then maybe this lad will be but Freddie Potts Mark II.
Well, if you're a young hammer, you presumably still live at home. If you're 19, I would guess.
Think so.
Which is probably somewhere near where they train and where they play.
Yeah.
Possibly, probably. Which means that getting down to Pompey on a daily basis and staying where you are living now, which can be good for a young man, not having to get an apartment and wonder what to do at 8 o'clock in the evening on a Thursday. It's
doable, isn't it? It's East London down to here on the train or whatever.
And their BMWs and what have you, I should think.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So establishing a relationship with Australia, of course. And there's been gossip about that, which I'll get your thoughts on in just a second. But establishing a relationship with a club like West Ham, would you have a problem with that?
No, I don't think so. No, I think if you can get if you have sort of a stable staff at both ends who can work together and know, if the West Ham staff know what the Pompey staff want and the Pompey staff know how the West Ham staff operate, and that can lead to a few different loans and different arrangements, and maybe the odd actual buy of a player and a proper transfer over the course of a few years. Why not? Yeah.
I've got a question only you could answer, and I don't expect you to, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
When was the last time we bought a player that we had loaned to us?
That's a good question. It's probably a very obvious answer, but I can't think. Barney the dog thinks he knows.
Yes, he does. He's probably got as good a chance of knowing as you and me. But
he has. There's nothing springs.
It's quite an interesting one, isn't it?
It is. Doesn't often happen, does it?
No.
And you do. I know in the past, the dim and distant past, there have been a few, and I can't name any off the top of my head, but there have been a few that have been so really good on loan. I've had them on for 3 months or half a season on loan, and then we bought them, and everybody said, "Yeah, brilliant." And then they've not been the same player when we bought them.
Why is that?
Like
do you think?
Is it that they don't need? They're not any longer looking to impress.
Not trying so hard.
Yeah. It's human nature in a way. Isn't
Take their foot off the gas.
Yeah. There must have been a fair few down the years. I will come back to you on that.
It's an interesting one.
More, in recent years, it's been. We loan them and then off they go again, isn't it?
Worth more than they were when they arrived. This is Mick Robertson's beef about the loan system. We do such a good job bringing players on, and we're very public about it. Last week, John Messino went public about the fact that Marco Mahoney has benefited enormously from his time at Pompey, and I felt he was shouting that out for the whole world to hear. Liverpool and Arsenal, anybody we might borrow a player from, he wants them to know.
That's right. Yeah.
What a good job they
Quite
do.
Rightly so.
But then Nick Robertson's point is we get them in, we improve them immensely to the point where we can't afford them.
Yes, that's true. Victims of our own success in a way, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah. But then I suppose the other side of it is you are getting a good player for a season or half a season, and you're not having to pay all his wages because the wages are split, aren't they?
Yeah.
So it does, that's why clubs use the loan system as they do. I do think that some clubs overuse it at times. I think Pompey have overused it at times, but there is certainly a place for it. And Pompey seem to know now. They seem to have the right sort of level now, the right idea about how many loans to get in. And what type of players to get in on loan after a few failures in previous seasons.
Pompey have got some people who are very good at red tape, because there's all sorts of rules and regulations which I tried my darndest to understand. I asked anybody else around Pompey Sound if they understood them, and they said, no, I'm not even going to try. And that has to do with the status of overseas players. And how you can convert overseas players from being overseas players who count to being overseas players still but don't count anymore, which is what they did, I believe, with Nick Schmidt.
That's right.
And somebody else as well. But what it means is that we can bring in another 4 overseas players on top of the ones we've got.
Yes.
All by being clever with the law, knowing the law.
Knowing the small print, isn't it?
Yes.
And making use of that. And that small print must change constantly. I would think every summer you have to, whoever at the club is responsible for looking at it and looking at what we can do, it probably has to read up again and just make sure it hasn't changed, or if it has changed, work out what that means.
Yes,
it's important.
It was one of our backroom boys, wasn't it, who spotted that if we stood down Iwan Boat, then we could register Colby Bishop.
That's right,
and that must have been hidden away way down in the list of do's and don'ts about registration and all the rest of it.
None of the your average fan didn't know, did it?
No.
You remember how surprised, how stunned we all were when Colby Bishop was suddenly in the squad halfway through the first half of the season.
It was a real fillip, wasn't it?
There's a lot of rules and regulations that football clubs have to follow, and of course the moment you get one wrong, you're in trouble, aren't you? You look, if you field a player that you haven't legitimately signed or whatever, or you've signed one too many overseas players or something, you can be in all sorts of trouble, financially or even with points deductions and things. So it's Pompey obviously have somebody or a team of people who share the responsibility who are good at that side of things, which is good.
We had 6 at one point last season, which meant that one of them had to stand down, couldn't even be on the bench, which calls for man management. But, how do you rate John Messino as a man manager?
I think he's very good. I think he's an excellent man manager, and I think that's a big part of why he's been so successful in his first couple of years as a manager. He has the air of someone who is not a friend of the players, but he's on the same wavelength as the players. He's someone that they can relate to. I mean, his age is a factor in that. I think he's not much older than some of those players. He's only 38, 39.
Yeah.
So that it's different to a 60-year-old who's been a manager for 20 years coming in and telling the players what to do. But I just think I think he has he has an air of authority about him, knows his own mind, and I'm sure in training and in the dressing room that comes across. He doesn't suffer fools, but he just seems to strike the right balance between looking after people and getting the best out of them. He's not one to throw players under a bus in post-match interviews or anything like that, is he? But he'll protect individual players or not talk about them. If somebody's made a howler, he'll gloss over it, won't he? And I'm sure he'll have his say to the player involved if they've made a terrible error in a game. But he's not one to come out shouting, ranting about it to the media.
No, I had my eye on him on the touchline when Ben, our goalkeeper, who was being tried out, basically. I think this was against Hull. And he made a howler of a clearance. He tried to pick somebody out and he sent it straight to the Hull centre forward. Yeah. And 18,000 Pompey fans all reacted. We all sort of went, oh, like that. And my eyes were on Messino then, and he didn't move a muscle because the goalie then cleared it and looked up across at Messino to see if Messino was...
To see what the reaction was.
Yes, and Messino was like a statue. He was conscious of the fact he was being looked at by that player.
Yes.
And he didn't betray any disappointment, anger or anything like that. That's being meticulous, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Yeah. He's saving his reaction for later, isn't he?
Yeah.
He knows that he might need to have a word with the goalkeeper about that, but he doesn't want to publicly show he's frustrated by it. Because that just adds to the pressure on the player, doesn't it? If he shows that.
Now, there's lots of talk about John Messino's future at the moment because there's nothing happening on the transfer scene. So people are focusing on the managerial roundabout and the fact that there are vacancies at Bristol City, for example. I mean, or Middlesbrough. I can't for one moment think that even they've made an inquiry of him. They know there's no point, surely.
No,
But the focus is very much on John Messino.
Yeah.
He's a man of the moment, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? It seems like every I've not seen it with any leagues higher or lower, but any championship job that crops up, people are immediately looking at where he is in the betting, aren't they?
Yeah.
And linking him with it, even if they're just linking it themselves, rather than there being any firm link. And it's because of what he's done with us, isn't it? It's because he's got us up from League One quite comfortably in his first full season as a manager, and then he's kept us up against the odds a little bit. In his second season, again with a bit to spare at the end, and people are looking at that and they're thinking, well, that's if he can do that there, what can he do for us? What can he do with a bigger playing budget and so on and so forth? And a lot of these clubs have got much bigger budgets. Middlesbrough, Bristol City, Norwich, these clubs that are having vacancies.
Yeah.
So you can see why he's being talked about as a good candidate for all these other clubs. But he has been quite firm, hasn't he, in his interviews in the media, saying he's very focused on the job here, very happy here, wants to carry on the job that he's started. I think there's an element of him being very grateful to the owners and to Andy Cullen for showing faith in him at a time where they didn't have to, when they first brought him in. And maybe to a lesser extent, he thinks, well, they stuck by me last season when we were bottom of the table in November. Maybe he's thinking, well, they could have sacked me then. A lot of clubs would have done. They didn't, so I owe them a bit of loyalty in return.
I would love to think that you're right and that there is that much nobility left in the beautiful game. However, even Messina himself says, I'm not here to win friends, I'm here to win matches.
No,
so
that's right.
He knows.
Business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a hard game. We mustn't forget everybody around John Messina as well. There is a tendency just to always see Messina quoted, Messina's picture.
Yes.
Rich Hughes is doing a fantastic job.
Yes. Yeah, it's a team effort, isn't it? And it's all. And I'm sure Messina would be the first to say it's the coaching staff as well. And actually, you mentioned that, which takes me on to something I noticed in a story the other day, which I don't know I doubt whether anybody else has even noticed it, and I might be reading something into it, and there's nothing there. Let me just read you a quote. This was an interview that Richard Hughes gave to the News. Just looking back, he's done a few pieces in the News in the last couple of weeks. This was a piece by somebody chirping in there. A piece that Neil Allen did with Richard Hughes, and he was talking about last season. He was talking about the high points and the low points, and Plymouth away was a low point. And he was talking about the losing in the last minute at Coventry was a real low point. And then he was asked about the away form, and he said the away performances are going to be a topic for everyone this year, rightly so. There have been certain games where we weren't at the races. And then he said, West Brom was poor. We made the decision to rotate the group a bit, and it didn't pay off. And I thought it was interesting that Richard Hughes said, we made the decision to rotate the group a bit. Yeah. Because I've always assumed John Messina picks the team, perhaps in consultation with his his assistant and his immediate staff. Richard Hughes' choice of wording there suggests that maybe there's a slightly wider group.
The committee
pick the team. Yeah.
Well,
but I might be, as I say, it might just be the way it came out from Richard Hughes. I might be looking for something there that's just not there. I don't know, but it just made me stop and read it again and think, I wonder.
Well, I've just pressed the rewind button, and John Messina often says, "We decided, we thought this."
You see, that's not so surprising, is it?
No,
because he could be talking about him and John Harley.
Yes,
or he could be talking about him and the player involved.
Fair enough.
But because it's come from Richard Hughes, and Richard Hughes is kind of including himself in the decision-making process in terms of who picks the team or decides the tactics for a game. I just thought it was interesting. Yeah, one for somebody to ask him more about next time.
Yes, food for thought for sure. What was I going to ask you? We must do something that we threatened to do in your last two pieces and failed, and that is to get you to tell us the story about a match in which a team needed to score an own goal, or was it several own goals? I can't remember. What's the story?
Yeah, this is. I discovered this. I'm always on Twitter looking for little football oddities and things, and I can't remember how I saw this, but there's a Twitter account called It's Walter Ego, which is he's setting himself up as a chap called Walter Ego, which is quite clever if you think about it. And having looked at his timeline, he comes out with all sorts of weird and wonderful tales, not always about football by any means. But this cropped up a few weeks ago, and I read it, and it's one of those things you can't quite believe happened. There will maybe people out there that remember it, or remember references to it. So it goes back to 1994, and it was the tale of a team who discovered a loophole, that, in Walter's words here, a loophole so absurd they broke the game. They won the match by scoring an own goal on purpose. So this is the 1994 Caribbean Cup, which started with a group stage, 3 teams in a group. Barbados, in the last game of the group, needed to beat Grenada by 2 goals to stay in the 1994 Caribbean Cup.
Right.
They went 2-0 up, all going well. Then Grenada got one back, and it was 2-1. In this particular tournament, sanctioned by FIFA, there was the golden goal rule applied. But instead of the golden goal being worth 1 goal, it was decreed that a golden goal was worth 2. So if you beat somebody in a group game by a golden goal, your goal difference went up by 2 instead of 1. Nobody knows why that was tried. It was probably tried with good intentions. But in this particular game, they were 2-1 up, and they realised that 2-1 wasn't enough. But if they could take the game to extra time and then score a golden goal, that would be enough. They would have been seen to have won the game by 2 goals.
I get it.
So,
wow.
3 minutes to go, Barbados need to score an own goal to make it 2-2 and take it to extra time, golden goal time.
Somebody out there was sharp.
Yeah. So, what did they do? They played it around at the back. They scored an own goal. And now at this point, I realise this is difficult to follow. You need to draw yourselves a diagram as you're following this. So the score was 2-2 with about 2 minutes to go. Barbados just needed to score the next goal in extra time, and they would effectively win 4-2 and be through in the group. But Grenada realised what was happening, because they were the team that stood to go out if Barbados got through.
Brilliant.
So Grenada needed to either to score a goal themselves and win that game, or score an own goal, so that they lost 3-2, and again that wasn't enough for Barbados but was enough for Grenada. So you then had Grenada attacking both goals. They were trying to score at one end or score in their own goal. So Barbados had to defend both goals. And Barbados did manage to defend both goals. It finished on the 90 minutes 2-2, extra time, and Barbados got their golden goal to win 4-2. So it could still have gone against them, but they basically bought them because they knew that one goal in extra time would be worth 2. It suited them to go for extra time. And I think after that the rules were changed very quickly. Whoever had come up with the idea of two goals in 2 goals for a golden goal in extra time was never seen again, never allowed near a rule book again. But you can just imagine the last 3 minutes of that game, can't you?
Yeah, I'd have paid to watch that.
Half the
it's
team
not on
YouTube,
is it, or anything at all?
I don't
can't
think it is.
see it
No, not that I've seen.
Wow,
no.
what a fantastic oddity, isn't it?
But just when you think you've seen it all or heard it all in football, it's the team that needed to score an own goal, and did, and then the opposition. It had to score at either end of the game.
I happen to know that you've got another oddity up your sleeve, which we'll tease for next week.
We will, and it's the story. You see, you look these things up, and one story leads to another, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll save it for the next time. The game that ended 149-0.
What?
And it
not
wasn't
possible.
Not one of Pompey's away games last season.
Steady.
It was so bad. But yeah, 149-0. It was a bona fide game, proper game, played in Africa, and I will tell that story next time.
Well, I cannot wait. I'll just chuck you in one oddity that I've uncovered myself. When I was a boy, I was always fascinated by the record section in my Rothman's yearbook, and my eye always went to the highest score ever in a match.
Right.
And it was Arbroath 36.
Yes.
Bon Accord nil. Bon Accord. I found out what happened. Bon Accord is a Scottish cricket club who accidentally entered the FA Cup, the Scottish Cup, right? And were dumbfounded when the coach arrived and footballers dressed for a game of football got off.
The wrong sport.
So they decided to settle it with a game of football.
Yeah.
But the cricketers said, well, we can hardly play cricket. That, you know, which is unheard of in Scotland anyway. So we can't run or anything,
especially back then.
So just get on with it. You can do what you like. Every time we get the ball, we'll give it to you, and do what you like.
I wonder if they played in their full cricket kit.
Again, I couldn't find that. I was lucky to get the fact that the reason they got beaten 36-0 was because they were a cricket club and they entered the wrong tournament.
I hope they made the opposition play them at cricket in the following cricket season. Just
I don't know.
Balance things out a bit.
It was 18-something, I think. You know, very early doors.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Football. So, tracing things back to Pompey, there is but we're all hungry for transfer news.
Yes.
And on Pompey Sound, we do the news. We publish it about 5 o'clock every afternoon and run it through the night. But there's nothing doing. So, in desperation, we turned to Betfair to see if they've got a book yet on the Championship, and they had just published it.
Oh, yes, I've heard you talking about this the other day.
Yeah, the story is they've got us third to bottom.
Yeah, surprising. Really,
Where's that come from? Or do they know something we don't?
Who were the other two? I can't remember now.
Preston and QPR.
So
we're tied for third bottom with those two.
Yeah.
We're above Charlton, who are, it seems, nailed on to go down, and Oxford United, and I can see that. And I can see Preston, QPR as well, but we're talking ourselves up a little bit at Fratton Park, aren't we? Maybe a little bit of a reality check would be healthy.
I do think some of these bookies odds are sometimes when they're very early in proceedings, which those are, aren't they? You know, we haven't. None of your 24 clubs in the Championship have had a pre-season yet, made any signings yet, or anything else. So, is it somebody at Betfair sticking a bit of a pin in a list of teams and very quickly thinking, right, who do we think will go down next year? Pompey struggled a bit last year, they'll go down. Is it a bit unscientific, maybe, the odds at this stage? Well, or, as you say, is there a bit more to it, and should we be worried?
When I lived in Hove, above a bookies was an office which was staffed by the people who did in horse racing what they call the tissue. And it's them who make the original odds. And they would supply that to bookmakers as a starting point for the books that the bookmakers wanted to make public.
And then they evolve,
Yeah. And I guess somebody at Betfair does the equivalent, a tissue. Yeah. And it's a bit of a pin sticker's job, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It is when you're doing it at the very outset, you know, before you've got much. Well, the only evidence you've got for it is what happened last season, isn't it? And a bit before that. Yeah. You know, how have teams performed in recent seasons? And what are the promoted teams and the relegated teams likely to go? If you followed that to the letter, you would always have the teams relegated from the Premier League would always be the three favourites, wouldn't they? I don't necessarily think, because am I right in thinking that Ipswich are favourites?
Yes, 5.5,
which is probably fair, isn't it? You know, of the three teams that are coming down, they look the strongest. Leicester could have a few complications. I don't think Southampton will go back up straight away, personally, and I'm not just saying that because it's them.
There's a momentum there, isn't it? That's going to drag them down.
Yeah, it's going to take them.
They've been losing so many games. They're going to struggle against Bon Accord.
Not just going to, it's not going to suddenly turn it around. So I'm not too worried by Betfair. We'll come back. We'll remind Betfair of this if we're 10th after 10 games or something, won't we? And we'll say, well, what you saying now, chaps? But at the same time, if people are writing us off, if neutrals are saying, "Oh, Pompey won't be much good next season," doesn't bother me too much. I think, oh, that's nice. We'll just quietly go about our business and.
I think you're right. I hope you're right.
Prove a few people wrong like we did last year.
It gave us a talking point, so we were grateful about that, and we incorporated it in the news. Yes. Journalists are twiddling their thumbs at the moment. I'm not citing you as being one of those. I'm sure you're as busy as ever, but none of them have sat down yet and worked out whether John Messino is the longest-serving manager in the Championship, the second longest-serving, or in one place this morning I saw that he was the third longest-serving manager in the Championship. If you count the managers who've just arrived in the Championship.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but if you don't count them,
Yeah.
then he's the longest serving.
He's the longest serving, isn't he? Yeah, so that shouldn't be difficult to work out, should it?
You'd think.
Of the three that have come down.
Just Wikipedia and get their careers.
Yeah, I wonder if the Ipswich manager strikes me as someone who's been there longer. A bit longer. Leicester, no. Southampton, no. The three promoted teams, I wouldn't know. Jones has been at Charlton, hasn't he, for a fair old while now, so he could be longer. Possibly. Serving. Although, no, I don't think he's longer serving than Mousinho. Birmingham and Wrexham, I must confess, I don't know enough about. I think Birmingham have chopped and changed a couple of times, haven't they? On their way up, so
it's a disturbing merry-go-round, isn't it? I'm afraid owners are very, very trigger happy in the Championship.
For John to be the longest serving of the 18, or if not a few more, having been in the job for 2 years, is quite alarming, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not a lot of job security in that line.
No, if Spurs were in the Championship, they would be on their successor to the successor to the successor of Postecoglou,
Yes.
wouldn't they? They'd have been going through them every 3 weeks.
Correct to think they would, wouldn't they? Yeah.
Could talk to you all day, Steve, and one day we will. But
one day we will. Yeah,
looking forward to the story of the 149 goal game. Fascinating.
And we might even have an actual signing or something like that to talk about by next week.
I've got one last thing I want to ask you about.
Go on.
Paris Saint-Germain's technique off when they have kick-off. I saw this in a little throwaway video on YouTube.
Right.
They aim to kick it upfield for a throw-in as close to the opposition's goal line as possible.
Oh.
They just blast it for that because they figure that. They take that throw in then, the opposition team take the throw in, but they haven't settled into their formation. So there are gaps.
Yeah.
And the back line isn't straight and what have you.
Right.
And what they do is they take the kick off, they blast it in for a throw in just by the corner flag if they can manage it, and then they crowd that area with 7 men.
Yeah.
To get possession quickly.
Disrupt okay.
Because it's hard to control a ball if it comes to you from a throw-in because it's always bouncing, and unless you're able to trap it and kill it stone dead, you've got to put it down or what have you.
And they did score an early goal, didn't they? Did they do it directly through that? I don't know.
I don't know, but it's that strange manager that Leeds had a couple of managers ago. His name's walked out of my head at the minute. Yes. He used to do it, apparently, because he said it's very difficult to defend your own throw-in.
It's a bit like a rugby team going for a line-out,
correct?
Close to the opposition's back line or whatever.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that's not the correct. Sure, that's not the correct rugby terminology, but. Interesting tactic. Well, PSG haven't done too badly from it, so maybe our John could try that in a few games next season.
I bet he's always open to new ideas.
I'm sure he is.
Lovely talking to you, Steve. Thank you so much for your time, as ever.
And to you, and speak again soon.